Katie, the name synonymous with French cinema, synonymous with film and modelling and being a sex kitten in the 60s, as she was called in general.
Yeah, and associated really with this time where she sort of helped ignite the sort of sexual revolution of the 50s and the early 60s. She came to embody, if you like, this sort of notion of female sexuality on screen that was bold, that was unapologetic, and to many, just those images of her that you're seeing on screen now, she was this just beautiful, beautiful actress who just shot to fame at a time when sort of French cinema, certainly in this country, hadn't been a big thing, but it was the way that she looked, the way that she behaved in the first film that we came to know her from, which was And God Created Woman. It really did break boundaries at a time when sort of what was shown on screen in that film was considered almost scandalous for its just frank depiction, really, of sensuality and of sort of women's sexuality and their behaviour and having sort of sexual desires. She instantly became, with that film, a sort of symbol of rebellion and a style icon as well. And I think her influence, particularly within the worlds of fashion, it went on for decades. I mean, she starred in over 40 films, and she eventually went on to prove she could be more than this sort of seductive ingenue. She proved her acting chops, if you like, and she worked consistently through from the sort of late 50s to the early 70s, but then aged 39, she'd had enough and she'd walked away from acting. And at the time that she retired, she cited the fact that she felt that she'd given her youth and her beauty to men, and men had got to sort of frame the way that she had been seen. So she is someone that sort of shot to fame internationally and that did so much in terms of making French cinema known throughout the world, but in the end walked away from it because she didn't like the way that she was being presented to the world. But a brilliant actress and had starred in so many sort of hugely popular international films.
Yes, and Katie, you say she walked away from it relatively young, like you say, in her late 30s, but in more recent times, she was more focused on the welfare of animals.
Yeah, in 1986, I think it was, that she founded the Brigitte Bardot Foundation, dedicated to combating animal cruelty. It funded sanctuaries, and she had these numerous wildlife sort of rescue operations that they helped to fund as well. But yeah, I think that was the thing that she actually was much more proud of than her film career. She didn't like the fact that she spoke about the fact that feeling almost used by the film industry and the media, and said that she felt more comfortable in dedicating her life to helping combat animal cruelty and putting more back into the environment and that side of things. So it is interesting, really, that juxtaposition between this huge style icon, this huge star of cinema, those images that we see of her in the 60s and 70s are just instantly recognisable, but it is something that she was happy to walk away from because she felt that it hadn't brought her as much joy as working with animals in her tweet coming through from President Macron himself, who has said her films, her voice, her dazzling fame, her initials, her sorrows, her generous passion for animals, her face that became Marianne. Brigitte Bardot embodied a life of freedom, a French existence, universal brilliance. She touched us. We mourn a legend of the century. Equally, though, we have also had a tweet come through from the President of France's far-right National Rally Party, RN, Jordan Bardella, and he has put, "The French people today lose the Marianne they so loved, whose beauty stunned the world. Brigitte Bardot was a woman of heart, conviction and character, fervent patriot, lover of animals whom she protected all her life. She alone embodied an entire French era, but also, and above all, a certain idea of courage and freedom." Certainly those comments in later years have somewhat sort of shadowed her reputation, certainly within just being known for cinema alone. But there's no taking away from the more than 40 films that she made throughout the course of her career. She was this screen icon known around the world for just her beauty and for the way that she came across on screen, for being a talent.
It has been confirmed that the French actress and legend Brigitte Bardot has died at the age of 91. The French actor and singer became an international sex symbol in the 1950s before turning her back on the film industry to become an animal rights activist. Her big breakthrough came in the film And God Created Woman in 1956, written and directed by her then husband Roger Vadim, in which she played a woman who pursued her sexual desires in the way that men do. At the time, it caused quite the stir. Her animal charity, the Brigitte Bardot Foundation, became hugely successful around the world with a presence in some 70 countries. But in later life, she became quite a divisive figure. She was fined several times by the courts, and she was a public supporter of the National Rally. In fact, she admitted to sharing Marine Le Pen's views on migration completely. Katie Russell looks back at her life.
Brigitte Bardot, the French cocktail of kittenish charm and continental sensuality,
Je suis brisée.
who swept away the cinematic cobwebs of the 1950s. Her wealthy family thought she'd be a ballerina, but at 15 she became the most famous model in Paris and met filmmaker Roger Vadim. Her parents refused to allow their relationship. Bardot's attempted suicide forced them to relent.
Are you allergic to anything? Ship's doctors, for example?
I haven't noticed it.
At first, she played innocent love interests, with some success.
Do you really enjoy making this kind of film, or do you want to be a serious actress?
Oh no, I prefer this kind of film. I will be a serious actress when I will be older.
But then came And God Created Woman. Directed by Vadim, Bardot's character pursues her sexual appetite without shame, like a stereotypical man. Confronted with unrepressed female desire, social order collapses. In 1956, it was a powerful statement.
Il y a une demi-heure qu'on est là. Qu'est-ce que tu fabriquais?
Distinguished directors like Jean-Luc Godard competed to work with her. Though in Hollywood, roles often verged on parody.
I would like very much for you to make love to me. But it's impossible.
She struggled with fame. There were several husbands and many love affairs. Bardot channeled her misery into her characters. And on turning 40, she quit.
Et c'est une chaîne adorable, il faut absolument que quelqu'un...
I gave my beauty and my youth to men, she said. I'm going to give my wisdom and experience to animals. Her foundation campaigned for their welfare. In later years, her reputation was severely damaged, with homophobic slurs and multiple fines for inciting racial hatred.
Do you want me? Je ne sais pas, but your loving eye.
A scar on the memory of an icon, who, in her prime, put the bikini, female desire and French cinema on the map before the glare of the cameras proved too much.
Je ne sais pas why my heart it is so gay.
Brigitte Bardot, who has died at the age of 91. There have been tributes coming in through the morning. Here's one from the French President Emmanuel Macron, who has paid his respects. He says her films, her voice, her dazzling glory, her sorrows, her generous passion for animals, Brigitte Bardot embodied a life of freedom. He adds that Bardot touched the country. We mourn a legend of the century. Well, let's get some views on the film side of her career with the film, TV and culture critic Ashanti Omka. She's in London. It's good to see you. We've talked about some of the more controversial aspects to her later life. Talk to us about the film and how she changed the role of women in film in the 1950s.
Well, I guess back in the day, in that time, Hollywood was quite conservative in what they were putting out. And she went in there and showed intimacy and desire in a way that hadn't been seen before. And of course, you know, she has been a muse to people like John Lennon and Paul McCartney because she oozed that kind of sex symbol which was something that was untouchable to so many people, and it was suddenly shown to them on screen, and that's what she brought to the screen in those very early days when she was very young. And she went on to take on different roles, of course. And that look that she had, apparently Paul McCartney and John Lennon wanted their girlfriends to look like her, the Bardot look, the smoky eyes, the blonde hair, and the pout that she always had. It was a very iconic look that she put forward from her modeling days all the way through to her movies. And that's something that stood the test of time in so many ways. People are still imitating her.
Yeah, you can't talk about her without focusing on the sexuality. And there's a really famous article that's been re-quoted today, Brigitte Bardot and the Lolita syndrome. It was written by a French writer, Simone de Beauvoir, in the 1950s. And he says, eroticism is not magical, but aggressive. In the game of love, she is as much a hunter as she is a prey. The male is an object to her, just as she is to him. And that is precisely what wounds masculine pride. And I wonder if there was a little bit of that contributed to a success in the United States, because, as you say, at that time in Hollywood, that sort of sexuality wasn't present in the films they were making.
Yes, that's right. And actresses after Brigitte have actually then followed on with what she put forward on screen. She was quite uninhibited, and that was something that she had already done since she was very young, and she was very much there for it. And of course, as she moved into Hollywood, things changed a little bit, because the roles she had were quite different. In Shalako, for example, the 1968 Western film with Sean Connery, her role had changed quite a bit. But in those early years, she was very much there to put forward a very freeing idea of sexuality, which I feel was a big turning point for Hollywood in so many ways, as she moved from those French movies that she made, like And God Created Women, into those Hollywood roles. And she did very few of them, really.
Yeah, 40 films in all, very big career early on, and then she gives it all up at the age of 39. In later life becomes quite reclusive. Do you think French film will remember her? Because she had some fairly controversial comments towards the end about the way actresses behave around the Me Too movement, and whether they played on their female wiles to get parts in films. She called them hypocritical. How did that go down?
Not well at all, especially in this day and age. It felt like she was stuck in the early days of her life, and she never quite moved on. She, of course, dedicated her life to animals after a certain age. She was only 40 when she decided. She was 39 when she decided to quit cinema and become quite a recluse. And I guess she had then formed her opinions with people who were around her, and not really put herself out there. She was rarely seen in public, really, after that. And I guess she didn't quite move on with her views as the world moved on with their views. And it's very sad, really, because in those early days, she was making, in many ways, a big statement with what she was and who she was. And then as time went on, she was looked upon and largely forgotten, because people didn't want to think about those things she was saying, the homophobia, the views on immigrants, and her views on the Me Too movement, which just didn't feel right at all.
Yeah, no doubt iconic, somewhat controversial, but certainly transformative in French film and culture. Ashanti Omkar, thank you very much indeed.
Here is the drama of the life and loves of a young girl of today.
And so Brigitte Bardot announced her arrival. And God Created Woman was her breakthrough film, introducing her as a symbol of the sexual revolution of the 50s and 60s.
J'ai jamais autant parlé de moi.
Her image of a free-spirited, so-called sex kitten would make her world famous. The French film, directed by her then husband Roger Vadim, scandalised some audiences in its depiction of female sexuality. It was a sensation, becoming the then highest-grossing foreign language movie ever released in the US.
Miss Bardot, you've been called the world's sex symbol. Is this the way you want to be known? Is this what you hope the future will bring to you as an actress, or would you like to do something else?
I want to be myself.
And what is yourself?
Look.
Bardot's sultry image, with her signature heavy black eyeliner and her voluminous tousled hair, helped make her a style icon, her look still copied today. It was all a far cry from her childhood dreams of being a ballet dancer and her strict Catholic upbringing.
Brigitte Bardot, the young French star, is also quite easy on the eye.
Her stardom would bring constant press interest. Married 4 times, she and her second husband, Jacques Charrier, had a son, Nicolas, from whom she became estranged, only returning to good terms later in her life.
It is said that you are not a happy person.
I am not an happy person.
I have heard you quoted as saying...
Yes, I am very happy.
You are happy.
Yes.
There were early signs that she was struggling with fame. In 1960, she left hospital after attempting suicide. Her bouts of depression would lead to other attempts to end her life.
You've been gone an hour. Where have you been?
And then, still a screen idol, she gave it all up, aged 39, and after more than 40 films, to spend her life promoting animal welfare. She set up the Brigitte Bardot Foundation, auctioning off personal belongings to fund its work. But her outspokenness and her ties to France's far-right National Front would bring her into conflict with some groups. Her criticism of immigration and Islam's influence on French culture would result in a number of convictions for inciting racial hatred. Hers is a complex legacy, yet there is no denying Brigitte Bardot's cultural impact. Her very name synonymous with a new wave of cinema and women on screen. She has a special place in the history of film.